Here, there's an app called Line, Line, that is the number one tool. It's only as far as I know here and in Korea and in Japan. But here you cannot exist without it. So I have that. I have Facebook to talk to my kids. I have WhatsApp. And then I still have WeChat for all my people that I met when I was in China. They can't talk to me any other way. And Telegram. I'm up on a lot of platforms.
I have WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Do you have old man cup with two cords? Like they hold a cup and then you hold a cup to your ear.
I
Someone,
have. There's a new one that it's an abbreviation. It's STFU.
mm,
Your family line.
I'm here with Lishi, John, and today we're talking messaging apps with friends who love to give each other business.
It's difficult to learn the difference between an acronym and abbreviation. If STFU was an actual word, that would be an acronym. That's the difference between an acronym and an abbreviation.
But it can be both. If you're using it all the time, it goes from LOL to LOL. That's why language does what it does. And right now, because of all these various means of communication and because it's becoming more and more nonverbal with memes and little, what are they called? Not avatars, emojis.
Emoji.
Emojis.
Yeah, I hate emojis. So, it's not my thing.
I think you
But
either
I'm saying,
are an emoji person or you're not an emoji person.
and it's pretty clearly chronologically delineated to begin with. And then from there, it gets further delineated. I just saw this thing on TikTok where they had a millennial and they had, the new show what it's like to call somebody on the phone. And the one guy's going like this and the other two are going like this.
I like that.
It's just hang up the phone and he goes like this and they go and put it away. It's a different world.
Yeah.
You know what was a real culture shock or whatever shock to me is my kid was 2.5 years old, and at 6 months he could do sign language, which is it's much easier to do than verbal communication. Walk at one, talk at two. He was iPadding and iPhoning, right? From the earliest. I introduced him to my MacBook. I said, well, you click here, and he's like, click? What do you mean? And it really opened my eyes, like explaining to someone this crazy new technology that to us is mundane. And what's it going to be like for him at 40 to explain to his 2 year old, 8 year old, whatever, the technology chasm then?
My nephew was using an iPad from like really early. And then later when he started using a laptop, he didn't realize he had to save files because he never had to before. Like on an
Right.
iPad or whatever, it's built into the browser. It's all browser based, right? Or you go into the app and everything's saved in the app. You don't physically have to save anything.
Boney, a long time ago, you told me operating systems were going to kind of become not relevant, like you wouldn't need an operating system. I don't know if that was before or after, but now you've got the Chromebook, right? Where the operating system is basically the browser. Or John, do they have an operating system underneath the Chrome?
Yeah, the last place I taught, one of my students was in Taiwan, and she was a big time hardware person at Google. There's a hardware layer. Bear in mind, the goal is always to get the ones and zeros, right? However, you get the ones and zeros, that's where you're going, right? Because that's all the machine knows, right? The machine never knows anything else. No matter what you do in the intermediary layers, it's how fast can you get to binary? How large a piece of binary can you feed at one time? How many bits in the byte? There is a Chrome OS, they call it. And Chrome OS is basically designed on the concept of the old Oak, the old Java. In other words, it's designed to be pretty much machine independent. It doesn't care what's in between the layer of the language and the layer of binary. It'll find a way.
There was the Linux and Unix people, right, who always hated the other computer people. And that's Jack.
There
But,
you go.
but so those
Fuck
people,
Windows.
there's always been this war of
Fuck NT.
the GUI or the graphical user interface or whatever your operating system is. Those people who are Linux and Unix feel that it's a weird buffer that doesn't need to exist. I was talking about this thing of them stopping you from being able to open up your files and go into your hard drive. The things that they're trying to do now, everything is boxes and you click on a box to launch things. You don't physically go into your directory.
You're not looking for an executable.
In one of my early Apple experiences, in the menu, they had this thing called Hyperstack, where you had a deck of cards and you could create a hyperlink that would take you to card number 45. And even
Mhm.
back then, I don't remember what year it was. I'm like, well, why can't that link be a phone number, or why can't that link be on somebody else's computer? That thought occurred to me. And then, obviously people were already thinking about that long before me.
Yeah. The guy who
But
did it, the guy who first did the link system, right? That concept of an embedded link in text. Back in the early days of Wired magazine, when Wired magazine was hip and out there, they did a feature on that guy. He was on the weirder side of Jobs and Ellison and all those guys. This guy was on the wacko side. Nobody dreamed that that was how we were going to navigate, was clicking on links. It's not a great idea. If the interface isn't verbal for 98% of what you have to do, then it's still too difficult. You should be able to say to your computer, hey, turn on my TV. I want you to find all the football that's on there right now. Tell me what they are, and I'll pick one and then play it. That should be going on. But the orders of complexity there on the legal side alone. I mean, right now, OpenAI is being sued by like everybody in the world.
good. You know what? When you go to school, you're supposed to cite your sources. And every computer has and correct me if I'm wrong, Boney, John, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm in sales, inside sales, so I have just enough information to be totally wrong about technology. Every computer has an ability to log its efforts, what it does. So there's no reason why OpenAI can't log every source that it looks at to come up with your answer. And if it's taking shit from a copyrighted place, then it should cite its sources. And if you are stealing, then you're a piece of shit. The creator of the content deserves to be compensated. That's why I was so very surprised when the moneyed interests of the internet were able to make it so they didn't have to pay royalties to musicians. They negotiated, look it up. They negotiated some type of thing where Google doesn't, for Google Music, creators don't get anything like BMI and ASCAP. My buddy used to work at BMI ASCAP, and he would see the checks come in for like Madonna and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, they don't have that. For the internet, they don't have to pay that. And for the internet, and correct me if I'm wrong technology wise, there's no reason why the law can't say, hey, you have to turn on the log thing. And every time somebody goes to your site and listens to that music via your stream, you have to pay the same thing as a radio station would have to pay to that artist for the right to use their music. There's no technology keeping streaming services from doing that. And they negotiated a way to not pay the artist. Is that technologically, am I wrong about them being able to log people coming in and looking at
Depends on how they built it in the first place. They taught it things by feeding it things. So then when you're feeding it in the beginning, you have to tell it to. It's like
That's
spaghetti.
exactly right.
wait, you're missing the point.
Well,
Does it have the capability to do it?
If you look at the model, it can tell you the source for every piece of data it comes up with, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, the large language model data system, it's tracking every step of its learning, because if you need to debug it, you want to go back and find out. So you need to be able to go back and look and say, how are we doing this? Why is this happening, kind of stuff.
With that said, there is absolutely no reason why they should be able to use monetized data for free.
That's a different issue. So, I mean, I think you're doing an apples and hand grenades here. There's what the technology can do. Then there's the question of intellectual property, and particularly as it pertains to like creative content, let's call it. So let's step away from technology and intellectual property and go to the source material for the acquisition of the knowledge by a large language learning model, where it's sourcing its material. You could very simply, I shouldn't say simply, but you could relatively easily create a model where it's doing cost accounting at the same time. That's what Click to Pay or whatever that thing is that Google bought that does all the advertising everywhere on the internet for everybody. The first guys that were monetizing advertising. Here's what's going to happen if you do. Like, I don't know if you guys know what happened where Universal Music went to TikTok USA and said, if anybody else starts playing Taylor Swift songs and analyzing the lyrics, we're going to charge you, right? So it is still their copyright. And Taylor, among all people, is, she monetizes her shit. If you go on TikTok now, there is no longer people sitting there watching songs playing that belong to Universal Music, which is a pretty big portion of the library. So can the entities do this? Absolutely, they can. Here's the downside if you're not Taylor Swift, because let's face it, Taylor Swift doesn't need the ink right now. But if you're Olivia Rodrigo, right, and you've had like a hit or a couple of hits, but you want to turn into Taylor Swift, do you really want your company out there pulling all your music off TikTok so that the viewers aren't going to grow you. So it becomes one of these things. What can you do? What should you do? And then there's a third perspective, which is if I'm a user, why should I give a shit? Right. So theoretically, in my mind, it comes from the idea of it should all be transparent to the user. I don't care about the back end. I don't care about the information management part. Now, clearly, producers are getting screwed right now.
The problem that they're having is that people are making videos with other people's songs and then
Yes.
hitting the monetize button.
Yes.
Well, and my whole point is that TikTok is charging money for their service, and Universal Music is being played on their thing. TikTok should have to pay a royalty the same way that WLS in Chicago used to have to pay a royalty to Steppenwolf.
That's a separate licensing. Yeah, that's a licensing deal between TikTok and them. But the problem becomes if I create something on YouTube, use a popular song, and then I'm asking for money.
I just actually saw a TikTok from an author who got a new thing from Google's publishing entity about something she wanted to put up on Google, whatever it is Google uses for written word content display. I don't even know what that is. She shared the licensing agreement. The way the licensing agreement was written was it's a non-exclusive, non-binding, non-restricting license on Google's part, which means, yeah, sure, they're going to pay you whatever the frick it is, whatever couple of pennies it is. But they can repackage your material, they can repurpose your material, they can take the characters from your material and the story from your material and use it to create brand new content for which they owe you nothing.
Yeah.
It's Bob Kane syndrome. It's like, yeah, hey, thanks for the Batman. Here's $500. Go have a nice day. And now we're going to use the Batman to create, multi-billion-dollar industry. And F you, which was the Bob Kane story. And if you look at what Google is, they're not just Google, right? They're Google, but they're also YouTube. They really are in a position to say, look, anything you put up on YouTube, right? They can now create some peculiar grumpy old man character who's excessively verbose, nothing to do with reality, and make money off of it. And there's nothing I could do about it.
First of all, we're on YouTube, so I can say nothing but kind things about Google.
There you go. Yeah, YouTube. YouTube's the great solution to all mankind. There is this trade-off where on the one hand, it's never been easier for content creators to produce and distribute their shows, make it known to people, right? Which is what the coolest thing about the internet. No, the bad thing about the internet is what this stuff that Dan was talking about in terms of integrity of intellectual property and the things that you were talking about, Bonnie, in terms of who controls what.
That's why they had problems with the writer's strike and the strike with the actors, is because streaming was outside all of the earlier contracts. Every time something new comes out, the contracts no longer apply and they have to be renegotiated. People get sued. I'm sorry that is the world we've made, but that is the world.
Oh, yeah. It's going to happen to OpenAI big time. Some governments, not the American government, actually feel like they have some responsibility to act in the interest of their citizenry. So what you're seeing is Google and Instagram and TikTok and OpenAI being viewed in the European Union completely differently in terms of their practices. Some of them pulling out. I have an Apple iPhone 14 that has a SIM slot. I can put a SIM card in it, right? You can't get one. The only reason I have this phone is because according to the EU, you can't sell a phone in Europe that doesn't have the ability to put a physical SIM card in it. It's the same reason that Apple's going to USB-C in Europe. America doesn't feel that compunction. And that kind of goes to where I started with all of this. If where you've got Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and Line and WeChat's different because it's China, Telegram and, all of these various services, that's still ridiculously, stupidly unfair to consumers. It's like if you had picked up the telephone in your home in 1970 and had to figure out which of the 9 telephone companies you were going to have to use to call that guy. It's still infinitely too complex.
Hey, do you use Signal as an IM?
I've used Signal with drug dealers and a sponsees. It's encrypted end to end. It's really good.
Yeah, that's why I use it to send porn.
A large part of our fan base is degenerates, so any tips you have for them would be great.
Well, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, and Apple iMessage are all end-to-end encrypted. Your dick is only seen by those people for whom you intend your dick.
Oh, degenerates rejoice.
I was thinking of maybe sending a dick pic, right? But then I was thinking not a good idea because it's permanent somewhere.
Yes. Yes.
Then I was thinking,
Many places, not somewhere. Many places.
if me and her FaceTimed my dick, would that imagery be captured somewhere?
Depending on how your browser settings are and how your personal cloud storage options are, it ought not. They should not be able to do that. Are they doing it? I don't know. I've been watching Person of Interest lately, so don't
Okay.
ask me.
Someone in the Defense Department might come across your dick, but that's probably about it.
It raises the larger question, the more important question, which is it a good thing or a bad thing if the Defense Department views your dick as non-threatening?
So I have tallied our votes, and feel free to write in the comments section who you think is never right in this episode.
Yeah.
I think it's great. What you guys are doing is great, DOD, CIA, whatever you guys do, I'm behind you. Yay, America.
I just want to tell you, there was a time when my dick was threatening.
You're never right.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want more content from the Never Right podcast.